Many beginner artists want to work in the game industry, but for some reason nobody really talks about what it means to be a game artist. In this video I want to talk not just about the profession, but also about the limitations that a beginner faces regarding the technical aspects of games. A game artist is not just about drawing, it's about being a specialist who at least roughly understands the whole process of the game creation. That's why it will be easier to find a job if you already have experience in the game industry. But where you can get this experience if no one teaches about it? So, what is game art? Game art is a subset of game development that combines the work of many specialists: concept artists, 3D artists, animators, UI designers, and they are all united by a common goal: to contribute the visual part of the game. Game art is created especially for games, so the main focus is on interaction with visual elements by the user. This is what makes difference from traditional art, illustration, or fan art or cinematic design, where the viewer is typically a passive observer. So a game artist visualizes how it will look like in the final product, in other words, in the game. I'll give you an example. If you are creating art for the platformer game, it's important to make gameplay elements visible enough to highlight important objects. For example, if you need to make the platform more contrasting because the player must clearly see what he can stand on. And at the concept stage it's better to put characters there to better understand the scale of surrounding objects. Or you need to consider that the camera will always be moving forward, so the rules of composition may work differently in this case. Therefore, our creative idea faces specific challenges that need to be solved, and we will talk about this a bit later. Does it mean that creating art is not a creative process but rather a technical one? No. What I mean is that the technical aspects of making games should not limit your creative process. Of course, a game designer or a level designer in the team will tell you what to focus on, but the artist still needs to be able to visualize it correctly. Take a look at this layout. Does it look overwhelming? But this is not actually that complicated if you know the rules. Another example is the battleground for RPG game. Look at this area, which should be visible to the player. It also has a fake perspective to make the game area with the grid of hexes more visible. And this is an example of game map with a hexagonal grid, where you need all the tiles to fit together seamlessly. Alright, something I want to say real quick. This is the first video of my new channel, and I have a lot of ideas for the new videos. But as with many beginnings, I need your support by subscribing to this channel, and your comment below will be very useful for me. If you're working in a team and you are making a concept for a 3D artist, it is better to have an idea of how exactly 3D works. Whether it will be a low poly model, shaders will be used, or light and shadows on textures should be painted on or not, or the lights will be generated technically. Or you work with an animator who has the main idea of the animation and you need to discuss with him the best way to make everything work and prepare animated parts correctly. If you work in a game studio, there is usually a technical artist who prepares files to work in the game engine. But if you are an independent freelancer and do different projects, you will have to work with a more diverse type of game art. Most often in the requirements in brief written rules for providing the final source. Or you are selling assets on stocks, you also need technical knowledge. Besides the fact that your art needs to look visually good, you also need to make everything work in game engine. There are often limitations, especially in mobile games. For example, for optimization we need to draw identical objects that will be duplicated as assets in the game engine to optimize device memory. Remember this map? This is what the whole map looks like. This location looks big and complex, but in fact many assets are duplicated in order not to use much memory. Limitation of screen sizes on different devices. You need to make your composition look good on all screen sizes without being cropped. So the game artist in the concepting step should consider how it will look on different devices. If you need a parallax effect, you need to draw invisible parts of objects. Often before you start working on a game project, the information is provided about the lore, game genre and style, for example in the form of mood boards and references. By the way, the chosen color scheme will depend on the game genre. Also, the artist's task is to show the atmosphere with the help of form palettes and textures. To pursue a certain style, you need to have an idea of what game styles have already existed, at least to be able to come up with something new. This is especially important for UI artists, where there are certain trends in button layout and scales, colors, etc. For example, if you make the XP bar green, it will look more familiar to the player than if it will be purple. And lastly, a word about the future of game art. The game industry as a whole is developing rapidly. Games are becoming easier and faster to make, and at the same time the tools for creating art for these games are developing too. I'm not even talking about AI right now. Even with the limits of the software we are using, it is possible to create game art much faster than before. By understanding the whole process of creating game art, you will be more valued as a professional. But do not afraid of the technical part of creating art. It is not as difficult as it may seem. It just requires some structured knowledge, but if you master them, you will spend less time on the technical part, and you will have more time for the creative process. Creating game art is rewarding, so imagine you are creating art and then you can play and interact with. So your art and animation come to life. Isn't it worth to learn game art?